Welcome to the Workforce Situation Room, where we spotlight some of the promising and innovative solutions that address some of our most pressing workforce and economic challenges, getting in the way of our mission at Workforce Solutions Borderplex. That mission is to power the people with the tools and opportunity to reach their potential in the workforce, and ultimately, our goal is to develop area businesses and the economy. I'm Bianca, your host, and I stand alongside our ladies of leadership at Workforce Solutions Borderplex with Leila Melendez, our CEO, Alma, Aranda, Workforce Development Director, and Karina, Castillo, our Senior Research Analyst. In this room, we all believe every situation has a solution. Here's the situation.
So we're all here for a reason, and these female soldiers have been representing workforce for over 2 decades collectively, and they've stayed for a reason, and I kind of wanted you all to know why. Let's start with Leila. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what brings you to Workforce Solutions Borderplex, and economic development in general.
So thanks, Bianca, for organizing this. I'm really excited to kick this off and do something a little bit different for our organization. I've been in economic development for the majority of my career, and I think back to the time when I worked for a company that here in El Paso, we sold products into the Juarez maquila industry. And back then, I didn't see or realize that I was actually contributing to economic development. And it wasn't until I started to learn about it from reading the business paper and from listening to the things going on in the community that I was really interested in what makes our economy tick differently from that of other communities. And I just stayed in love with that industry, with economic development, and with the possibility of creating and starting something from, it's not from scratch. I think I've known since I've been in there and I've reflected back, I've known that there's this fantastic foundation that we have built over many, many years, and it's for a long time has been on this cusp of exploding and changing. That change doesn't happen overnight, and I think maybe sometimes we forget that those types of things, that these big other communities have just spurred overnight. No community, no big city, no big economy has ever happened overnight, and I think we fail to see that. I think we fail to see our success because we compare ourselves too harshly to other communities, and I think we have this great economy already built in, and we just need to continue to work at it and change it and modify it and adapt to it and keep making it better and better. So that's what drives me. That's what motivates me to do the work. And I think I consider myself really fortunate to be in one of the biggest, if not the biggest, component of what drives an economy, which is the people, the workforce, the actual labor. Your labor, your staff, your skill is what makes or breaks your organization, regardless of the type of industry that you're in.
Nice. And would you be able to recall any specific moments during that time where you first got inspired that maybe was the catalyst in lighting that fire?
Yeah, I do. There's several, but I remember the company that I worked for is an international company based out of Boston, and we had a small sales office here. We didn't have any product. I just had a sales office, had a desk, and I would commute to Juarez 4 times a week and sell to my customers that are in Juarez. But in one of our customers' plants, they did automotive harnesses. We actually had product there. They gave us space in their warehouse in Juarez, and we had, a few thousand feet worth of warehouse that was considered our warehouse, our product in their plant. And I remember thinking, well, if we can put a plant in your building, why can't we put a plant in El Paso or put a warehouse of these capacitors and resistors, whatever we sold in El Paso, and sell to other customers in Juarez? And why can't we do this for everybody? And that's when I realized that's what economic development is. That is what quote unquote business attraction is. And I remember at that time, I started trying to make calls and communicate to the leadership within that company and encouraging them to put a distribution center in El Paso. Like, do you realize how close you are to the border and all of these things? And then I started to sell the region to the decision makers up in Boston. Never got anywhere, obviously, but that's when I realized that's what economic development is.
Nice. But when you say that you would try to sell the region to somebody out of state, and back then, what was it that you believed about in El Paso that made you feel confident enough to say, buy this?
There were so many things. One, our proximity to all of the maquilas and Juarez. And manufacturing was huge then. It was, the end of the 90s and around 2000. So manufacturing was really booming across a lot of different industries. You had automotive, you had consumer electronics, a lot of different, medical devices, and so it was it was all industries and Juarez, the proximity to it, but also the location of El Paso on the map. You're literally in the center of the country, and you can access manufacturing centers in Mexico, also manufacturing centers in California, manufacturing centers in the Great Plains, and the proximity not only to Mexico, but within the United States, the land availability that we had here to put a distribution center, and then the types of jobs that would be. If I could, I'm not an engineer, but if I could sell a capacitor or resistor, or if I could figure out what that did for my customers, then anybody could. So there were a lot of different assets that I thought were things to sell about this region.
Awesome. And I kind of want to jump on both of Karina and Alma to tell us a little bit about, I know I do want to hear your story, but I think that's a really good question to touch on why we believe in our region. So what would you sell about El Paso now if you had the opportunity to sell it? Let's say your life depended on it and you had to sell El Paso.
Well, you know what? It's funny that Leila went into that story because it's strange. Somewhat similar experience, but almost on the other side of the aisle. So I first kind of learned about all of that because I actually worked for a distributor of manufacturing products. But our pitch was to get companies to move to Mexico because that's really where our corporate office was. And so back then, I was certified to do like NAFTA, things like that. And even once that kind of kicked off, I knew that company as there was like labor shed, and I understood that. I wasn't really deep in the world of that. I was working for this one private company, but as things started to shift quickly, I remember talking to my employer and saying, there's a contract opportunity here, or there's a contract opportunity over here. And he was terrified to go for it. He just, we were already selling a percentage of the product, and I was like, let's try it, and I was really eager, really young. And he was like, no, because he was afraid to fail. And that was when I first kind of realized, and I was like, there's got to be something out there for business retention and development, you know what I mean? And how do you get somebody who's doing a little bit to do more? And that was ages ago. And as things transitioned, I started kind of going into social services. But all through that experience, one thing that was always very prevalent for me was the resiliency and our work ethic. Like, for example, that company was very much involved in the textile industry. And it seemed like it was going to be catastrophic for our region, but we bounced back. And then, it's evolved into other things, and we just continually have this strength and drive. And so I think even when we have new employers come into the area, I think they're very much surprised of the quality and the resiliency and the work ethic that we can provide. And I think that speaks a lot to our community. So for us, we're so used to the diversity and all that kind of knowledge and language that just comes within that culture. But it's very unique in other areas. And I think that's the selling point. I mean, we are absolutely, binational, tri-state, the center of everything. And I think for us, from a workforce standpoint, from an economic development partner, we really need to capitalize on that and let everybody know, we're here. I mean, we were doing STEM things before STEM was a thing, you know what I mean? Entrepreneurship, that's embedded in our culture before it was even called startups or entrepreneurships or gigs. I mean, these are just things that we've had in our culture, in our blood. And it's just time, like for us, it's really right now, I think we're at the precipice to really kind of launch that forward and capitalize on that and promote it.
Paint a picture for us as far as entrepreneurship in our culture. Like what comes to mind when you think before it became a buzzword?
Right. I mean, I don't know that, I don't think anybody who's native El Paso and doesn't have a family member or friend or neighbor that does a gig on the side, whether they're, finding ways to sell cakes or making clothes or doing things, or even, even just growing up, like some of the solutions for some problems that we would come up with. I would see, neighbors, cousins, my dad, uncles kind of create, you know what I mean? It was just, and that's what I'm talking about, like that whole STEM thing, like that's kind of ingrained in our blood. Like, call it what you want it. People call it all sorts of like a MacGyver, a Hala Chicano, whatever it is. It's really kind of STEM at its core, along with entrepreneurship. Like we can just, I think it's in our blood.
Hala Chicano was the first STEM to exist. You remind me, I wasn't STEM, but my first entrepreneurship way of making money, I was obsessed with quarters as a kid because I would put them, I loved putting things in the machines. And one of my guppies had gotten pregnant and had babies. And I remember like waking up and seeing a bunch of teeny little guppies. So I went and got sandwich bags and put water, and I got like 5 and put little guppies in each bag. And I hid them in my backpack, and I went to school and I sold them for $0.25. Like I was like, I'm gonna make it some right. My parents didn't even know. Like I had them in my backpack, kindergarten, and I'm just like selling them.
The little neighborhood tiendita that sells something, you know what I mean? A snow cone in the summer or whatever. I mean, you name it.
You're right. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about your journey and how you talked about your former job with those industries, but how did you end up at Workforce? I know you've had some trips back and forth, but kind of go through your
so I think, what's interesting is I can honestly say, I feel very lucky, very blessed. I've always just had really great job opportunities, but there was a time, and so I hadn't had to actually job search or go through that very much. It was just kind of opportunities presented themselves, and I went with it. But there's this one time I was working for a nonprofit, and it was right at the beginning of the last recession, and that's when nonprofits, like, you can kind of really tell when something, like, they start to feel it. Right. So it's a very grassroots nonprofit, and just like, the stereotype that everybody kind of thinks of what these offices are for, I decided to walk in and ask about unemployment insurance benefits. I just had a question, Long story short, I realized, like, the way to work search had really changed. I realized I hadn't actually applied for a job in probably about 10 years. And, I was like, if I could just talk to somebody, they're like, no, it's you apply online. Or, or maybe you send in the resume, but it's mostly online. Mm-hmm. And I was like, huh. So I did an application at one of the centers, and I got like 2 job matches, and I was floored. So I was like, what? And so.
What were those matches?
It was something really entry level, and I just didn't think that, I was like, something's wrong. Like, I don't like this, but that was just the reality of the way work search was. So I ended up talking, we have employment counselors at our centers to kind of help me with that. So, I was telling her, and by then I realized that I was sounding very frustrated. And I even kind of told her, like, I'm sorry, I know it's not you. I'm just really surprised. Like, I just want to, I had a couple questions. And she just kind of was very patient. And I was telling her, like, all my different background and experiences. She's like, I think you'd be a great candidate to work here. And I was like, huh. And once I got in, I fell in love with it. Just the things that we do, and it's a little bit of everything. Because for me, I think I have, like, definitely, I'm very enticed by business, economic development. But at my core, I know that there's, like, a social worker heart type of, and this kind of organization just, for me, it does everything. There's so many resources that we do. There's so many, some things are never going to really, like, I think we touch people that don't even realize that we're the ones kind of assisting them. And that's kind of what brought me here. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned. I actually left for a while. I went to go work for one of the regional universities. But it was funny because in the back of my mind, even as I was working at the university, I'm like, that'd be a great opportunity for Workforce, and that'd be a great opportunity for Workforce. So when I found out about, the leadership that we had here now, and just talking to Karina, we maintained a friendship. I was like, yeah, I want to try it. I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And it's just been great. And so I'm very, very proud to be here. I think this is a wonderful organization.
And aside from thanking Karina for bringing you back, do you remember the person that suggested?
I do remember.
What was her name?
She's no longer in the system, but her name is Raquel.
Okay.
Raquel.
So Raquel brought you in.
Yeah, she was the one. She was an employment services specialist who was like, "It's gonna be okay," and we just kind of kept talking through. And she's like, "Actually, I think you'd be great," and that's how I got started. To start working with our military population spouses, and that's what kind of got me in. Less than 2 years later, the board asked me to apply for a position, and then that was it.
I think we dug up a diamond here that I didn't expect to bring out with somebody that you think that met with you your first visit to Workforce as a customer, related with you, saw your frustration, knew that you were in a hard place, and was able to put you at ease, and beyond that, get you a job. And look where you're at now.
And I think, what's funny, because I was one of those customers, I didn't want to go in there. Like, for me, going in there was like the last thing I wanted to do. Like, I was like, ugh, I can't believe I'm going to have to go into one of these places, And I don't know where that was coming from, but that hesitation. But that's something that perspective that I have carried with me, because there's a lot of people that might not willingly come to our offices or understand what we can do. But I think there's, if they give us a chance, there's a lot that we can do for them.
So you're the workforce development director now, but at heart and at your core, you're still the WSB customer that walked through those doors on day one.
Yeah, absolutely. I literally try not to forget that.
That's really good.
Every day.
That's awesome, though. That's awesome, because it's like replicating that exact story is what we're trying to do on the leadership level, doing the exact same thing. Okay, so Karina, we're going to move on to you. I remember when I first started, you were part of the group of the anniversary Workforce 20 plus years.
20 years, oh my God. I won't tell you my age, but I'm 20.
You don't look a day over 25, so you're good. And these face shields like smoother skin up a little bit. So tell us a little bit about how you ended up at Workforce and kind of what brought you here. What made you an employee and stick around for this long?
Here at Workforce Solutions Borderplex, I do things that I love the most. Helping people and working with data. Because I understand I don't talk to them directly, to the customers, but by analyzing the data and then finding better ways to serve them and meet their needs, I think I'm helping them indirectly.
Right.
And after running all these reports and seeing all the people that we help and their success, oh my God, I'm really happy for that. And I was a participant also. And I almost wanted to cry because I came from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I was Lorica. I graduated from the computer information system. And I started cleaning offices. It was frustrating that I got a degree and I am cleaning offices. Why am I doing it in USA? Better opportunities? Then I see it was not Workforce Solutions Borderplex. It was Private Industry Council. It was called, it didn't exist before.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied as a participant in a summer employment. And I started there, and now I'm here with this wonderful leadership.
What was that transition? How did you transition from where you started to even just being an administrative employee?
Well, they had a department, management information systems, and then that's when we started with the new twist. And then I told my supervisor, I know how to manage data, how to manipulate data. And I remember her name is Patricia Gonzalez, and she works at TWC, and she hired me, and then I started with here in this region with the codes, with the old system to the new system, and I started with that, all the data, manipulating the data. Remember, we had tracking mechanisms to all the eligibility data into forms. We took all the boxes to asking to do all the data entry because the system was so slow. And then we became like doing later on analyzing the data and working with all the workforce data. And from that I came to now I'm research analyst, because not only work with the internal data, I work with external economic development to see we meet the needs of the region.
And so you're able to see on a quantified, measured level the impact that, like what's going on with our economy and with our workforce, but the impact that what we're doing is having on with numbers. Like, you see them in graphs. Like, a high graph means we're doing well, a low graph means we're doing badly. Well, not badly, but we need to get better. I think that data is a super inspiring, motivating. I can remember one time, well, I'm going to say April of 2020, when this pandemic hit. I think we got the final labor market report for that month. And so it was for April's performance. And it was then, and I cried because I had to take a step back, and I realized this is the number of people that don't have a job, that don't know what's going to happen, and we're backed up with our phones, and we're backed up with benefits. Even if there was assistance, it was going to be a while. And it dawned on me that you had so many thousands of people jobless, which meant how many families, how many children, how many people are uncertain right now. And that's when I realized how the power of data, like just looking at it in the form of charts, like you just saw that peak of this is where we need to work.
From 3.8 to 14.9%. And an unemployment rate.
Like a tsunami, like that movie where a tsunami just completely covers an entire continent. But I can see how that's like inspired you and motivated you for 20 plus years.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm happy because we are not only helping the customer, but their family. All the entire family we're helping, and we are changing the quality of life. Now they have better training, they can get better jobs. And then we are improving the economy of this region.
And we keep doing that. And I think right now with the pandemic, it's kind of, and stop me wherever you guys want, like jump in wherever.
No, I mean, I think at its core, that's exactly it is. I think where we are right now as an organization is we know how to utilize the data and really kind of pull the stories of what the data is showing. And I think we have the benefit of just kind of being a neutral organization to present the data. We're not trying to skew the data one way or another. It's just like, call it what it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, we're very resilient, but also the data shows a lot of opportunities, and things that we need to kind of really quickly move forward on. For us, when I came back, I was part of Karina's team doing research, and that's some of the things that I really enjoy as well. What was more telling to me right now with the effect of COVID is how many service-related jobs we have in our community. And so when something like this happens, how is that impacted? And that's, quickly we were able to mobilize strategies. We were very aggressive in, pursuing other grants to help us kind of develop projects to get moving on things. So I'm, excited to tell you about some of the stuff that we're doing to help businesses, because at its core, our function is to help employers develop and grow. We have training funds to get the workforce that they need to do that. So it's both, and I think it's really important for everybody to know that it's really we're serving the employers through building up the workforce. But when something like this hits like COVID, and obviously we're not the only community, but as a border community, with the sheer number of small employers that we have, the industries that they're more related to, I think, for us, it was a definitely urgent call to action to kind of band together and see what we can do.
Yeah. I want to add something, and just when it comes to our purpose as an organization, and Alma just mentioned like about our data, it doesn't benefit us to skew it in one way or another. And data can be helpful, and it can also hinder. I think something I'm very fortunate to have with this team, and also with our board and with the partners that we have and the relationships with those partners that we have, is we're not afraid of the data. The data isn't always good. It's not always a good story. It's not always positive. Frankly, usually it's not. It's not a good story. It's not a good data. And we could easily ignore it. We could easily say, and frankly, having grown up in this community, I can actually point to times in our history that we did ignore the data, that we didn't do research, that we didn't really put a scientific and a data-driven approach into our problems. We approached our problems on politics, on emotions, on different things. And we didn't go to data because I think we know that data will, if you let it, will lead you. It'll lead you fly, but it can also lead you off a cliff. And we're not afraid to look at it, be neutral, and attempt solutions at it. That doesn't mean that we believe that every single solution is going to work. We're just not afraid to try it. And the relationships that we have with our partners is that they know it. And we want the partners that are able and willing to test things out, to test them out with us. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And this is a really unique time because I can't remember a more collaborative and willing time in our economic development history. There were stories about, in the 50s and the 60s and things that my mom tells me I wasn't born. So I don't know what those other efforts were. All I do know is the efforts that I was aware of from the moment that I started really paying attention. So since then, I can't think of a more collaborative time amongst organizations like ours. So it's ripe. But the hardest part is putting ugly data up on the wall and not ignoring it. And that's what one of the purposes of this podcast is going to do, is let's look at this data, and we're going to look at it with one perspective and with one view. There may be folks out there that see it differently. And as we talk and we share data, somebody might, turn on a different light bulb will turn on. And we want to know what those things are, because we also know that we have our perspective, and we also remember that we're looking at, we can't forget all of the other angles. And we're fortunate that the angles that we have, because we have on our staff people that have actually used our system. So as users of the system, as residents of this community, we are advocates of this region like nobody else. And that's not to say that somebody from the outside can't advocate, but I can tell you that they can't advocate like we will advocate for this region. And so, Karina, having literally built this organization from the ground up, and Alma having been a customer and expecting something different, and then helping us now design something different, is really a unique and fantastic story for Workforce Solutions Borderplex specifically. And that makes us very different from any other workforce board in the state and any other board in the country. And this is the whole point of what we're trying to do, is how do we create or recreate, redesign, and redevelop our economy from this point on.
And, it's amazing that we're kicking off our podcast today. I mean, talking about, shattering, stereotypes and norms. And I think that definitely is the feel that you get, by working with this organization, and because of Leila's leadership and vision. I remember when we started kind of uncovering some of these, going down this different rabbit holes with the data, we started to dispel a lot of myths. I mean, you grew up hearing, like, this wage is okay because, it's El Paso. It's good for El Paso. It's good enough. Or the cost of living, and we had data to prove it. And it wasn't always easy to get that across. We actually had a roadshow. Like the data roadshow. I mean, that's how, that's how invested we were in just kind of saying, we need to have this conversation. It's not a pretty thing, but we need to kind of really own it and then do something with it. And we have. I mean, what we've done in just a couple years is amazing. We have a seat at so many tables now. It's amazing. But I mean, that's just one of the challenges. But I think it's important for everybody to know. We want feedback. What's working, what isn't. But yeah, our strategies are definitely going to be very data driven. There's going to be a lot that goes into it, and we're also agile. I mean, where we need to pivot, we pivot. We're not beholden to this is what somebody said, and we're going to make it work no matter what. And that's kind of again, that goes to the resiliency. I think you've got to be agile to move forward. But kind of back to what I was saying about what's in our blood, what's in our culture. I think that's why we can also sell ourselves as a very competitive workforce and not necessarily be satisfied with, entry-level wages and entry-level jobs and think that's good for El Paso. I think in our culture, as a region, our diverse population, we have that, and we can become those. I mean, we're already in a global setting just because of our location, And I think it's time that we really kind of move forward and bring those type of industries and companies that are here. You know, we face some migration loss. I mean, the brain drain, I grew up hearing about that. You know, we looked at the data. It's very real, you know, absolutely. And there's no reason for it, you know, so we need to just kind of really be able to have those conversations with several people and the community too. It's not just key stakeholders. Mm-hmm. It's the community that needs to buy in and realize like what an asset we are to be able to kind of really move forward.
It's almost like we have to garner more of us in terms of, you know, you were a customer, you were in the system, and get more of those people to be the advocates for us. It's almost like we have to build our own gang, you know, of people, because right now we're a gang, I would say, like a workforce gang, where like you guys came in and you're advocating because you're believers. You guys are believers. Right. You guys are proof of what what could happen with the right guidance and the right steps. So it's almost like we need that collaboration Leila was talking about. We need that collaboration to strengthen and to get more people through our doors so that they, in turn, the next generation can continue and it just kind of exponentially grow it. We need more gangsters, I think. And so let's talk a little bit about the vision that we have. I mean, we're definitely data driven and we have stepping stones from which to jump off, pivot from, and develop programming. But what's the vision? Like, what is the ultimate goal? Like, we're working our butts off every day. We're constantly doing all kinds of stuff, Monday through Sunday. What do we want? Why do we do this? I mean, we know why, but what's the utopia of the economy that we want to see?
I think my utopia is it's yet to be determined. And we can look at reports. We have reported ourselves to death here. Plans and reports and analysis. Every organization has done them. And if you were to look at and gather all of them, they all have the same challenges, the same issues. But I think we also have the solutions to those problems. And I remember thinking several years ago as they started to do as the state embarked on this 60 by 30 project, and we were listening and talking with our educational institutions. And we've known, I mean, I went to UTEP. I know that I'm a commuter student, and I know that I worked part-time. Actually, I worked full-time, and I went to school part-time. That's just how it was. That's just what our community does. Because I had to pay for school, so I had to work as much as possible to keep going to school. But back then, I didn't see myself as being in the problem column. The problem with me was that I was not going to graduate in 4 years. I was going to graduate eventually, right? That I was listed under the problem category. I was never seen as a solution for my employer. I was working for a company, and what I was learning, I was putting to use immediately in that office. I remember my boss telling me, "You know how to do Excel? You know how to do an inventory? You know how to do PowerPoint? You know yes, because I'm learning that in school." Mm-hmm. Oh, well, can you do this and can you do that? I think we categorize our problems as problems, but we don't realize that they're actually also a solution for somebody else. And I think we have solutions here. And again, the people, the workforce, the talent is actually the solution to our same problem, our same talent problem. And we just need to break out of the tradition. I don't know. I think I do know. I think it's part of our culture that makes us obedient and traditionalists. We will work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because that's just what the world does. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but we don't have to do that. Well, but yeah, we do. No, we don't. So I think we have to come to a point and find those, again, those willing guinea pigs that can test out different models. And we were talking about this before COVID hit. And we don't realize the agility, the changes that we made over the last 9 months. We threw out tradition and conformity and typical and everything out the door because of COVID, because we had to. It was a choice 2 years ago. It was a necessity 9 months ago. Mm-hmm. But the fact that we did it, it's possible. We can let go of the tradition. We can let go of that standard, of that typical that we've always just worked in. And I think if we let go of those things, and are willing to play and adapt with what we have, use our assets differently, I think that that's where we can redo an economy. But I think what's important is that we do it because it works for us. Later on in another podcast, we're going to talk about projects and things that we're doing. And I know that other peers of ours across the state, across the country have asked us, that's not something that a workforce board has typically done. And I said, I know, but in El Paso, this is what we should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, yeah, but that's not what workforce boards do. And I say, I think that's what you probably should have been doing. In your communities, you're needed accordingly. I think workforce boards across the country have stuck with this standard behavior, standard model. And few of us are playing outside of that. And we're going to talk about some of those examples. But because, again, I think that's what our community has needed for so long. And the success that we're seeing is, I'm not surprised because I think we've always needed it. We've just have been working in this standard. We've been working in a box. And we've gotten out of that in the last 2 years. And just even, coming out of that box a little bit has shown how far those efforts can take this community. Can you imagine how much we could have done had we let go of this tradition and this standard 10 years ago? So now there's no going back. Why? Why go back? Why conform to something? Just do for ourselves as much as possible before somebody gets wind of it, before somebody finds out or tells us that we can't do it. Let's just keep doing it and see how much success. And then at that point, I will dare them to tell us that we were wrong and that, no, you shouldn't have done that. No, you shouldn't have graduated so many nursing students or medical students. No, you shouldn't have graduated so many UTEP engineers. But let's do that now before, while we have the opportunity, while we have the resources, do as much as we can now before something else changes us and then we have to go back. But yeah, I think our utopia is making something with using the ingredients a little differently. So we're not making a cake. We're not making a pie. We're making something. We're going to call it something else.
Right.
It's going to be called something else, but it's going to taste great.
We're going to eat it and have a second. It's almost like, and as the labor market report that I talked about in April was devastating to me because it really threw me off my chair almost. But it's almost like that complete falling apart of this borderplex of this community kind of gave us the free, bare landscape to build that utopia. And this is kind of probably, I almost want to say it would be the only opportunity to even get us to think outside the box, because we were so used to this, almost robotic way of doing things, but B, to try things almost without fear of failing, because hey, anything can go right now.
It already failed.
Yeah, like everything's broken.
Exactly.
I mean, you may as well just let us try to fix it.
Right.
And not only for us to try different, but also all the claimants, all the more than 100,000 claimants since March, because they were used to, like Leila said, working from 8 to 5 in this type of occupation. But they never now they're forced to go to another route, maybe better pay. They're going to have better quality of life, and that's why we are here, to provide the skills to all these claimants, and not necessarily in the job that used to be working for 10 years, but maybe another career path that will help them. That's what I want all these claimants to create a career path and have a better life.
I think for us, we've been hearing, and that's kind of not, and I don't think only particular to our region, but for the past couple of years, you've been hearing about the AI threat, and it paints this like picture of this AI threat, and for us as a community, my utopia is that's an opportunity. I mean, I think we have the resiliency. I think we have the work ethic to make it happen. It's just gonna, like Karina said, and Leila mentioned, it really is gonna be taking it's a leveling up of our skill sets, which can be achievable, and that's gonna mean different things for different people. we have a lot of people to kind of get that message to and give them the tools and the confidence and the resources for it to be done. Because as Leila mentioned, I mean, what we didn't think, what we thought was going to take us years to kind of accelerate to, we were able to accelerate by force, but we still did it. I mean, everybody did it. Schools did it. Businesses had to do it. We did it. You know, government agencies. I mean, that's just kind of, and we've uncovered that it can be done. And so that Industrial Revolution 4.0 is here, you know what I mean? And
we kind of went to 5.0.
Right. I mean, we went from, you know, that scale. So, I mean, it's here and it's only going to continue to expand again, because not only in our region, but business as a whole has uncovered that this is a new way to do business. You know, shifting the work schedules and what do you really need and what are those actual skill sets? And so when we're looking at retraining and things like that, it's not necessarily one specialized skill. You're going to have a cross section and to be agile, right? I think more than anything. But I think we're in a great position to do that. I mean, we've done it before in other ways and maintained that agility and that resiliency. But now it's just really kind of, it's just kind of time for us to kind of really break through. I mean, you know, when I think of people, when people say like, you guys really think out of the box, I'm like, that box was shattered a while ago, you know, I mean, with what Leila vision is, you know, and just moving forward. And I'll be honest, you know, when people think about like your fearless leader and things like that, I mean, yeah, you know, it's one of those things like keep going because we know that we're doing the right thing, you know, in our hearts, it's well intended. It's the right pathway. It's what our community needs right now. And so we'll find ways to get it done. And so we're just, you know, at this point, we want to expand our partnerships. We want the community to know what we can do and know that they have this resource, you know, available to them.
Something really important and valuable about who we are is that we are listening. We're listening to what is around us, and we're not just listening to from the top down, right? We're listening. We have our ears on the ground. And my vision, so to say, quote unquote, is from listening to the things that I hear out, and maybe it's just my own personality where I just challenge and I ask why does it have to be like this? And the times that I've been caught like that. And I give this example often about my daughter, and now she's a sophomore at college, but when she was in middle school and she was exploring careers and exploring colleges, I remember talking to her on the drive home, and she asked me what an environmental engineer was because she had heard about it, and I told her, oh, this is what it does, and you look at the impact to the environment and, you know, before you build a building. And she's like, oh, that's cool, but I think I'd only want to do that like for half the day. So, okay, you know, and she says, yeah, because the other half, I want to work at the super Target. And I'm like, why do you want to work at the super Target? Well, because that's the one that has the Starbucks. And I said, okay, no, that's not, you know, no, you can't. You can't just work, you know, half day here and a half day at Starbucks. Why? I said, because that's just not how work is designed. And she just had this face like, what does that mean? You know? And she was in 8th grade. And then I thought, why can't she? She absolutely could work half a day as an engineer, the other half day as a barista, you know? And that moment has stuck with me because that is what I mean. That's a solution. That would make the engineering company happy, Starbucks happy, and my daughter happy. So why not do it? Just lean in. And we see these quote unquote millennials. I remember this conversation a couple years ago, like these millennials, they blah, blah, blah. But they lead with the experience. Their motivation is their own experience and what they, you know, how they feel and their quality of life. And they're willing to do it according to what makes them happy. And I think we as the leaders, we have those resources to make that happen. We have to be willing to let the millennials lead, willing to let our customers lead us. Business, what do you need? Let's give you what you need. You're going to lead us. We're going to spend our resources the way you want us to. Workers, job seekers, students, we're following them. It's not the other way around. And that is something that I want this community to know, is that we're listening and we're wanting to go in their direction. We don't expect for them to follow in our direction.
Right.
And for me, and kind of going along that, the utopia for me is getting all of them to be in the same situation that we're all in individually when we wake up every morning and we're exhausted, but man, I've never had this kind of energy where I'm just like, okay, what I got, ready to go, full blast. We'll take our breaks, but that for me is, I can sit here when I come into the office, when I try to escape the toddler room, I come in early and I don't even realize until the janitorial cleaners come in and it's 9:00 and I'm just like, I better go home. Like I've been here for 14 hours, but I literally blink and the time stops. And if we could get every one of our customers that, to help us lead them to the place that makes them feel the timelessness, that where time stops, and Alma, you and I talked about this a little bit too, and synchronicity happens. So like everything falls into place almost at the perfect time. You get the phone call at the perfect time. The opportunity shows up. And this is happening nonstop in my life right now when it comes to work. And it's happening to Alma for sure. I'm sure it's happening to you. I'm just like, oh, this random person that I hadn't spoken to in 18 years is going to come in and, it's just that. If we can package that and not even sell it, give it, but combine that with them leading us where we align their purpose, because that is what we're doing. We're letting them lead us and hopefully finding their purpose because we found our purpose, and just get them to that point. For me, if we could get even half the population, if not a quarter of the population, to be in the same synced situation that we're in, I think that we've won the lottery when it comes to economic redevelopment.
And you know what? I remember maybe about 2 years ago, I was asked to present labor market information at a conference, and it was for a specialized set of our customers that are receiving TANF benefits. And I was like, what? How am I going to get them to even listen about, labor market information and data? But as I kind of started talking to them, again, going back on that experience of what would that data do for me if I was a customer? And utilizing that. Something that I came across to, and it completely shifted the momentum of the presentation and the feel in the room, is I realized that everybody has had different experiences. One of the things that I realized, for some of us we call them barriers, for some of them we call them launching opportunities, right? I mean, because of this, it brought me, it brought me here. But as I was talking to a lot of these customers and clients, I realized that some of them kind of had already fell into the idea that what they had was good enough, or maybe that they weren't really the confidence to kind of move forward on a training, because they might have had a really bad school experience when they were in middle school or high school, right? I mean, they're thinking you're talking about training opportunities. I don't want to go back to school. And I was able to kind of share with them, there's so many formats of training. It doesn't necessarily have to mean, a 4-year degree, but that's what's necessary. I mean, if anything, I think right now what we've seen is that there's so many platforms, online resources, different levels, certificates, certifications, just trainings, and then of course, absolutely the degrees. But I think one of the best things right now that we're in is kind of really being able to highlight to everybody that there is something for everybody to level up on. There really is. Whatever you're comfortable with, we have the resources, and these resources are free, right now. And so that's kind of one of the things that I want to make sure that we can kind of put out there and people get to get advantage. Because I think once you kind of start building up that confidence within, that's what gets you to that level where you're I'm in the right place at the right time, and just things start clicking.
And what you were mentioning about working 14 hours is because you were doing what you like to do, what you love to do. And if people and all the job seekers and all the students focus on what they like to do, they will spend their lives working and then 14 hours, and that's okay because they love what they are doing. And if they are not happy, they won't produce. Because that's what they need to also find what they like the most, and then focus on that and see what the options are better for them.
And that's pretty much what it's almost like we're offering this experimental playground with your career.
Sure.
Everything's free. Give it a shot. I mean, I did that. I took a semester. I was just about to be finished with my pre-med courses. Really, I'm sure upset my parents a lot because I decided I don't want to take my MCATs. I don't want to do this. I don't want to sacrifice this. I'm going to quit. And I quit. And gosh, like I was the brain drain, right, to get out of here. And I took a semester of randomness. I mean, and I'm probably still paying on the student loans, but I took a semester of randomness and exactly kind of like my own way of doing the workforce experience. I took courses in advertising, Asian studies, because I just thought something was interesting about about Kim Jong-un back then. Like, I just found that really interesting. I did film, just random stuff, and I ended up in the journalism track because of this is it. This is what I love. So it took me having to quit and take that risk and even face my parents about it, like, I'm not going to do the doctor thing. I'm not going to do the medicine thing, and just jump and hope for the best. And I don't think I could have made a better decision. But we want to do the same thing for job seekers.
And you touch on something. I mean, whether your parents were like, yeah, go for it, or they weren't too happy, there was a support mechanism there, right? That kind of gives you the confidence to do it. And one of the things that we've learned is that there's a lot of people in the community that don't have that support mechanism. But this is where this is like literally we can be that support mechanism, to help them explore and identify and launch.
The hype team.
Absolutely.
The hype team. I mean, just continuing making sure that they maintain. So I don't know if you guys have any other things that you want to add before we wrap up. This kind of flew by. Here we go. One of those moments where you don't even realize time goes by. But
wait till we start talking about data. Then I'll really go by.
Right? So you guys have heard passion. You've heard some pretty deep emotion, some entrepreneurial secrets for selling guppies, and pretty much the realness of what the women behind the force. And I mean, obviously we have women and men working behind, but you're talking to some of the strongest leaders in the organization right now, and I'm glad that you guys were able to share your stories and that the public's going to be able to really understand who it is that's driving this and where we want to go. So just until next time, we're going to sign off from the Workforce Situation Room. And tell me if this is cheesy, but we can say this later. But this is where we get our start to brewing the solutions effect.
Thanks for joining us on the road to redevelopment of our workforce and economy. We'd love to hear your situations, share your solutions, or collaborate with communities to magnify the mission to power the people and the workforce. We don't always have a choice in the situations we face, but you do have a choice in subscribing to Solutions. Join the Workforce Situation Room on your favorite podcast platform and hit subscribe.